Hi everyone, my name is Gloria Caines, and today we are going to be going over recruiting and networking in tech, specifically for product managers and developers. So, recruiting is not easy. It takes a lot of energy and it is hard and draining no matter what grade level you are in college, especially in tech. So I'm here just to provide some insight after my 3 years in college. So a little bit about me. I am the president of Lava Lab this year. I was in the fall 2018 cohort as a developer, and I worked on an app called Radius, which was to provide students with real-time crime reports. I am a senior studying computer science and business administration, which is the dual degree from Viterbi, and I was at Microsoft the past 2 summers, last summer as a software engineering intern, and the summer before as an Explorer intern. And I've done a few things here and there at Square, as well as Built by Girls and Girls Who Code. So that's just a little about me, and I am excited to go over some of my tips and tricks. So today, what we're going to talk about are 4 main things. So one, pre-application prep. So this is even before you apply to the job, what do you need to do to maybe step your application up, kind of get your story right. 2, getting your foot in the door. How do you make those connections to make sure your resume is read, your resume is seen when you apply? And then 3, you got an interview. Now what? This is, you have your interview. What do you do? What are the next steps? And then interview time. So tips I have for the actual interview itself. So let's talk about pre-application prep. So creating opportunities for yourself. I think one thing that can be very daunting when recruiting is comparing yourself to other people, which is something you cannot do. Everyone has their own strengths, and maybe your strengths are grades, and maybe you are really excelling in school and you maybe do research, and that's where your strengths lie. Maybe you have a ton of personal projects that you do outside of class with friends, with big groups of people, or alone, which shows that you take initiative. Or maybe you are invested in a ton of extracurriculars outside of class, which shows that you can be in a team and you also, have the desire to do things outside of school. So whatever your strength is, it's important not to look over your shoulder and be like, I have to be perfect in all these different categories, which is not true. I don't have the best GPA, and I've never had my GPA on my resume, and it's never been a problem. Yes, I will send my transcript over if a company asks for it, but it's never been a problem that I don't have my GPA on my resume because it's not my strong suit. So in creating opportunities, 2 things I wanted to talk about were personal projects and clubs on campus. So personal projects are great for both developers and PMs. And what's great about personal projects is it shows that you can take initiative and that you want to build things on your own. And what you can do with personal projects is make sure this ties into something that you're really passionate about, something that you want to be in your storyline throughout your resume, throughout your application. So if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested in social justice, if you're interested in fintech, putting that into your personal project can show that you really care about that subject and you want to work on it. So besides personal projects, joining clubs on campus like Lava Lab are an awesome way to just show that you're able to communicate and be a part of a group, and not only for the application process, but for yourself, right? Instead of just being an individual among the masses here at USC, you are part of this community, and you now have this network that is able to help you get internships, help you get jobs, and it's a great way to meet people. So some clubs on campus that I would recommend joining if you're interested in entrepreneurship. So this is again for PM or developers. We have Lava Lab, we have Spark SC, we have Troy Labs, we have Workbench, a ton of orgs for entrepreneurship. If you are a developer, you could do Case++, Makers, Scope, Code the Change, all awesome organizations. For PM, if you want to look into consulting, there's Trojan Consulting Group, there's Lacey, and so there's so many opportunities, and definitely apply everywhere. You never know where you're going to get in, so please do not hold yourself back if you're applying to an organization. Awesome. So after you've sort of created an opportunity for yourself at school, let's talk about finding internships and jobs that fit for you. So I know as a freshman and as a sophomore, I was super overwhelmed with all the internships that were open. And so some that I have listed here, the ones in the white outlined squares are all for freshmen and sophomores. These are also actually for underrepresented groups in tech. So this would be for Black students, for Latino students, for women, for LGBTQ students, and they are catered towards freshmen and sophomores. So, you know, Facebook has their Facebook University programs. This is awesome because they have Facebook University for software, Facebook University for product design, for analytics. Also, all these are paid, which is great. You want to make sure you're getting paid for your internships. Google Engineering Practicum, which is more for developers. The Microsoft Explore program, which I did, which I highly recommend. USC is a huge feeder into Microsoft. I think we have about 80 interns at Microsoft every summer. And what the Microsoft Explore program is in particular is 4 weeks of product management and 8 weeks of software. So it's great if you want to get a little taste of both. And then Twitter Academy is very similar to the rest of them. And besides that, I just have the general internships that are popular for each company. I have these 4 here because USC does have a lot of students at these companies, which is awesome. I highly recommend, again, applying, even if you don't think you're going to get in. You know, I applied for all of these freshman year, didn't get in, and then second year at USC, I got into Microsoft, right? And then I got interviews at all of the places my junior year. So always apply. It's okay if you don't get in. The world will not end. You will figure it out. But these are great ones to start with and to look at. Okay, great. So let's talk more about once you find these internships and jobs that you're interested in. So one thing that I did is after my freshman year, I realized I missed a lot of the opening dates for when the applications open. So what I did is I created a calendar of all the opening dates for applications because some of them have a pretty short opening time span. And so I set a reminder on my calendar for when they open so I could be prepared and I could apply right away, which means that I am early on in the process. So definitely do that. Along with that, you can do a list of your applications that you've sent in and the status of them. So, you know, you can create a Google Sheets with the places you've applied, if you have received a response back, and whether you've talked to someone there, if you have a connection there, just having that organized for yourself. Again, I was never someone who applied to 40 companies. I always felt like it was better to narrow it down and try and put a lot of effort into a couple. So don't be overwhelmed if you think that you have to apply to 50 internships because you do not need to. And then the last thing I wanted to go over for pre-application prep is resume and cover letter. I know everyone talks about this, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I'm not going to share my resume on here, but if you would like to see my resume, I'm happy to share it. So you can just email me at gcanes@usc.edu. But a few things that I've taken is, you know, if you are applying for a tech internship, so this means that any tech company and not a bank, not a finance company, something that's great to have is a pop of color. I have a teal blue on mine, and I've actually gotten a lot of compliments on the teal blue from recruiters. And this is just a good way to show, you know, you're with it. You might have some design experience, or not even design experience, but, you know, you understand how to make something look good. And I think this stands out compared to the regular business Marshall format. Another thing that I've had throughout college is a mission statement or an objective on my resume. This is about a 2 to 3 liner, just giving a brief explanation of who you are and what you're passionate about. You know, your resume is very linear and straightforward. So how can you show more of who you are in that mission statement? So for example, I talk in mine about how my mission is to bring more women into computer science and to make technology more accessible. What can you do that can make you stand out? Another thing that I didn't know to have until I think sophomore year of college is to add my skills in classes. So especially for developers, you want to put the languages that you know, and whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or proficient. I would not put one on there if you're beginner. I have made the mistake of putting a language on there that I was a beginner for and then asked in an interview if I could code in that language. So make sure that you know the language before you put it on. Or if you're going to have an interview, make sure that you know all the languages on there. And then also the important classes that you've taken. So maybe not all the classes, but if you've taken data structures, if you've taken algorithms, these are important classes that recruiters want to see that you have experience in. And then another thing for both the resume and the cover letter is make sure that it is one page. Recruiters will not look at a resume if it is 2 pages. They also will not read a cover letter if it is 2 pages. As for the cover letter, I don't think it's that important. I don't know if all the technical recruiters look over cover letter, but if you do write a cover letter, make sure that it is very concise. You have an opening paragraph talking directly to the recruiter, saying what position you're interested in, why you're interested in it, why you'd be a good fit, and then maybe have 2 small paragraphs about 2 experiences, internships, or programs that you've been involved in and how that could like translate to the position, and then close it out and just say thank you. Awesome. So now let's talk about getting your foot in the door, which I personally think is the most important thing to get internships and jobs. Like I said, freshman year and sophomore year, I applied to all the same places. And even now, if I apply to a company and I do not have a connection there, or if I have not talked to a recruiter, I will not hear back. But every single time without fail, I have talked to a recruiter or had a connection there, I always hear back. So I think that this is extremely important. So let's talk about finding a connection. So one thing that is important is finding someone at the company that you want to apply for and just hearing about their experiences there. And that means that maybe they could help you later on. So one thing, we're going to go over asking for advice versus asking for a favor first. Unless you are extremely, extremely close to someone, it is never a good idea to just, text them or email them and be like, hey, could you give me a referral to Google? Or, hey, could you email the recruiter at Facebook for me? Just because, if you haven't talked to them a while, if you're not really close to them, it's not always the best thing to do. It's not going to look good. They might not feel so great about that. So what's great is if you know in advance that you're going to be applying to a company, just ask them to, if they could get on a call with you and if you could learn about their time at that company. So be like, hey, so-and-so, I saw that you were interning at Apple this summer. I would love to hear about your experiences there because I'm interested in applying. And so then it's not you asking for a favor, it's just you being interested in what they are doing, and people love to talk about themselves. So if you do that, they are usually more than happy to help. And so then what that does is if you have that conversation at the end, then they might be more interested in helping you along the way. And it might not be right away, but then later down the road, you have that connection and they know that you were interested in the program. And so that's in general. And one thing that works for that is LinkedIn. So say you don't have a personal connection to someone who's worked at a company you want to apply for, go to LinkedIn and either look at your first connections or your second connections who have worked at the company, specifically at USC. And this has worked. I've had my friends do this, or even alumni of USC, where you message them and be like, hi, so-and-so, I'm a XYZ major at USC, and I'm extremely interested in applying for the software engineering internship position at Salesforce. And you'll say, oh, I would love to get coffee with you and just hear about your experiences just for 20 minutes. And again, they love talking about themselves and they are usually happy to discuss. And then later on, they might be like, oh, I'm happy to
that's a great way to get your foot in the door. So yes, I think whether it's through LinkedIn or if it's someone you know, I think do the same thing. Unless it's someone you're very close with, you can definitely ask for a referral, but I always ask for advice before I ask for a favor. Okay, next, talk about
networking on campus is, I think, important. It just helps you gain those professional skills that are used in interviews. So ones that are open for anyone to go to are the Viterbi Career Fair, the Marshall Career Fair, and the USC Career Fair. And I think what's important about these is sometimes you go to these events and you're intimidated to talk to a recruiter and you don't know how to approach this interaction. And what you should do is have a 30-second to a minute little pitch about yourself and a little blurb about why you want to join that company. And you should just go right up to the recruiter and hand them your resume and be like, hi, I just want to talk to you about XYZ position because I'm really interested and I think I'd be a really good fit because of ABC. And this means that if you email the recruiter later, they know your face, and having that interaction is super important. The same thing if you're at a workshop event. I know a lot of companies hold workshop events to go over resume reviews, and so it's more of a group activity. Still go up to the front and talk to the recruiter. There's no harm in talking to the recruiter one-on-one, even if it's a group event. So just always make that effort. It shows that you've taken initiative, that you care about the program. Same thing with club networking. A lot of organizations at USC do networking events or recruiting events, and just always make sure that you talk to the recruiter at any event, or even an alumni. Sometimes they have like USC alumni who work at the company. Talk to them too. Get their email and make sure that you save it for later. You can email them and say, thank you for coming to the event today. I really enjoyed it. Here's my resume. And this is just great ways to have connections while you're applying. So the next thing that I also think is the most important thing is emailing a recruiter. So once you get a recruiter's email, which could be through that, making a connection earlier, like I said, through someone you know, LinkedIn, one of your friends, someone at USC, or seeing the recruiter at a networking event, always send them an email when you apply. You don't want to overwhelm them, but just one email. And so this is the template that I always use, and it always works. So just an overview, I say, hi, recruiter's name. I'm Glory. I sent this one last year. I'm Glory, and I'm a junior at the University of Southern California, studying computer science and business administration. And then you say, I'm reaching out because I'm extremely interested in the whatever position at your company. And I would be very grateful if given the opportunity to participate. I had a referral for this company, so I let them know that I had a referral and that when I had applied. And then I told them what I had done this summer, so you could tell them what you had done in an internship, in a job, or in a project. And then something that's great is you say, I have my resume attached below. If there's anything you need from me, please let me know. So even though you've already sent in an application, this is a great way to get to the recruiter, which means that your resume and your application will be read. Otherwise, I think it's very difficult for your application to stand out unless you have this personal connection or this recruiter making sure you are seen. Okay, awesome. So now you got the interview. Now what? What are the next steps? So technical and PM interviews, these take work and they take practice. And I've done both interviews, and especially technical interviews for developers. I know these are such a pain, but if I can do it, you can do it. Promise that. So let's talk about for software engineering first. So, cracking the coding interview is a must. I think it is just really important to read through to understand what these interviews look like, right? I didn't know until I read this that, first you want to clarify the problem, and then you want to and ask more questions, and then you want to do pseudocode for the problem, and then you might do a brute force answer, and then you might want to optimize that answer, and then talk about the runtime of it, and then go through test cases for it. So I never would have known that unless I went through the Cracking the Coding interview book. The second thing I think is a great resource is Glassdoor. If you go on Glassdoor, I think you have to pay for an account monthly, but I think I paid for 1 month and then canceled it. But you can see popular interview questions that each company has, and this has been extremely helpful. A lot of companies ask similar questions over and over again, so this is a great resource. And then lastly, Elite Code is definitely very important. This is just practice coding problems, and you just code on the website, and there's like, I think 2,000 coding problems, and they have easy, medium, and hard. I had a Elite Code account, not a pro account, just a regular account. But I think sometimes you might think to yourself that you understand it, but there's a difference between understanding it and being able to code a problem out. So I think that's really important. As for PMs, the same thing goes for cracking the PM interview. There are a lot of different types of questions for PM interviews, right? You have your product design questions, you have your strategy questions, you have your estimation questions, your technical questions, and there's a strategy and steps for each of those. And cracking the PM interview goes over them, and they have practice problems, and I think it's a really helpful resource. Another thing is the pminterview.com. They just do randomly generated questions, which is also really helpful. For both cracking the code, for the dev and the PM interviews, a great way to practice is working with your friend. If you have another friend who's recruiting, you should definitely ask each other questions. Specifically for the PM interviews, I have a friend who is applying for PM as well, and I'm also applying for PM jobs, and we work together and we just ask each other questions. And this is a great way to get practice, learn from each other, and also play the interviewer in the situation. And then behavioral questions. I think this is something that has really helped me during interviews. I think that my behavioral answers are really great because I think them through beforehand. So I don't go in not knowing these. I actually create a list of behavioral questions, and it's the same for every company, but I have a different answer for every company. They're targeted towards the different companies I apply for. So these are, I think, popular 4 that I have gotten asked at almost every single company that I have interviewed with. So the first one is, tell me about yourself, which is super popular. And this is supposed to be a 30-second to 2-minute response. And you want to state very briefly, who you are, maybe talk about a few experiences that you've had and why this would make you great for the company you're applying for. And then try and stick in there something that you're passionate about as well. And then why X company, also very popular. You want to have an answer that's not super cliche and is also tied back to your story or your mission, right? Like mine, one of mine is making technology accessible. So I'm usually able to tie that into companies I'm applying for. A time you were a leader is usually asked. This could be a time you were in a team, something you had to lead a project. You want to talk about how you're able to bring people together, communicate well, etc. And then a time you faced a challenge. This one is difficult. You want to make it seem like, yes, you had this hard set, but you were able to come back from it somehow, or you were able to learn XYZ from it. So going through these questions beforehand and writing them out. I have a document where I have answers to these written out for every single company is extremely helpful. Okay, this is the last section, which is interview time. So first of all, I know that interviews can be extremely terrifying and intimidating, but every single person feels the same way going into the interview. So as long as you have some pep in your step and you are calm, it will all be okay. And I also would like to say that I don't think I've ever nailed an interview. Like, I don't think I've ever left being like, that was such a good interview, I definitely got the job. I have never felt that way, ever, going through an interview, but I've still gotten job offers. So don't put too much pressure on yourself when it comes to the interview itself. So one thing that I always do, I've done since junior year of high school, that my mom had me do is power pose, which I'm sure everyone's seen the TED Talk on it, but I swear it works. So whether you are physically there, you can like go into the bathroom, power pose, or now we're doing virtual internships and virtual interviews. So definitely power pose. I always make sure I have a smile on my face beforehand to make sure that I have, I don't know, my confidence is boosted. My imposter syndrome is gone. And then the second thing I think is really important is high energy. You should be sitting at the front of your seat when you are having an interview, especially in person. You don't want to be like at the back of your seat. You don't want to make yourself small. You want to be like up and ready and high attention at the interviewer and very engaged. I make sure that I am smiling, I'm nodding, I am just excited to be there, even if I'm psyching myself into it, even if I'm not, right? You want to make sure that you are very excited for this opportunity to be there and you are ready to go. Also, make sure you have questions for the interviewer at the end. These are really important. You want to make sure they are specific to the company, maybe specific to what you are into. And they will always ask you at the end, do you have any questions for me? And you do not want to be caught red-handed with no questions. Another thing is a thank you note that you should send to the interviewer when you are done. If you have their email, definitely send it to them. Even if you have like their office, you could send them a handwritten thank you letter, and that is really important. Overall, throughout the interview, I think it's important to really breathe and understand that if you mess up, it is not the end of the world. Everyone messes up, and it doesn't mean that your chances are ruined, and it is a great learning experience, and going through interviews just makes you more comfortable for the next one. That is it for my recruiting and networking presentation. If anyone has any questions, I am more than happy to talk with them. Again, I know that recruiting is such a challenge. I'm going through it again right now, but you are going to be able to get through it. It is small steps, taking small steps at a time. So yes, if you want to email me, feel happy to, or even like DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn. And yes, good luck with your recruiting process.